Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. As you can see, I have a new camera and I'm also experimenting with a new audio setup. Overall, I'm just trying to up my production level a little bit by also putting in a little bit more work into editing. But for today's video, we're going to look into high-tech kick and bass. Now, over the last week, I've been enjoying making high-tech. If you follow my live streams, you will know all about that. I've been making a track live on stream, but also a little bit in my free time. And obviously, I've done earlier experiments for other videos as well as other projects. But this time I think I have a really cool kick and bass to show you, so that's what we're going to get into today. So this is the track that I'm working on. I'm going to play you this little section here so you can hear the bass line in this key as well as in this lower key. So you can hear that this bassline will work both in a very up-tempo sense and a very high-energy sense, as well as in a little bit of a darker way. So I'm going to start off with the kick patch, which I made from scratch. I'm going to zoom in here and you can see this unnamed, unused track. But what we'll find here is the Serum patch as well as the EQ and LFO tool that I used to create the kick drum. So let's have a listen to this first. You can hear that it's a very snappy kick and it has a very strong attack to it. To do this, we're using this very basic Serum patch here, which is basically my standard kick setup for any time that I'm making kicks in Serum. So we have 3 LFOs. This first one is tied to the volume, and you can see the shape that we're using here is just to carve in the volume shape that we want for our kick. You can see that it's set to envelope mode and that it's set to a 16 note because we want a very short kick. Remember that most of the time in high-tech only one of the 16 notes is being used by the kick and the other 3 are being filled up by bass note. You'll see what that looks like as a waveform when I play it. So that's the first LFO. Now let's move on to the second LFO, which is controlling the coarse pitch here. And this click is just dialed into taste. And again, we have envelope mode and 16 notes. And then there's a very similar shape here. As you can see, there's a minor difference in here. And I just came to these 2 shapes by tweaking and listening. But this second LFO shape is actually modulating the master tuning here. And you can see we've set up different amounts. This is just under 50. And this is just under 25. And what this essentially does on the pitch is it sums these 2 modulations together. You can see it as this being applied to the oscillator, and then the oscillator gets an additional pitch information from the master tuning, so these 2 happen at the same time, and therefore they sum together. So here you can hear what it sounds like if I play with those shapes. So if you're following along with the same setup as I am doing, you can think of it as LFO3 doing the body and LFO2 doing the click. This LFO2 here is what's responsible for the transient of the kick sound. Now you can see here that we're not using any effects, only this EQ as well as this LFO tool here. And this LFO tool is here again just to shape the kick. As you can see, we're applying some high pass filtering here, which means that we're going to get a lot of post ringing. Now this is just to clean up the sound here and to make sure that there's no rumble here. But we do have to deal with that post ringing, so that's what this LFO tool is doing. Now as you can see from the shape here, if I zoom in, you can see that we're not just going from a high volume directly to a 0. What you want to do is not something like this, but you want to slide it off progressively. This will make sure that that oscillation does not just get cut off, but that it smoothly goes down to silence. Now let's have a look at how the bass line is made. So for the bass, we're keeping it pretty simple. Here you can see we have basically a normal saw wave, but you can see that it's slightly different from the normal saw wave that we start with. The way that we've done that is we've gone into the harmonic editor here and we've modified the levels of some of these harmonics. You can see that again we're using an LFO set to envelope mode and 16 notes, but this time we're not modulating the pitch, but we're modulating the cutoff of a filter. And this is just a very basic Moog 24 dB filter. And as you can see, I'm not using any of the resonance, the drive or the fatness. I'm also not using any of the effects in this patch. What I am doing is using velocity control. This velocity assignment is useful in some of the fills where you can play around with the levels of the different bass notes so that you can add a little bit of extra groove to those parts. For the processing, I've opted to go with M freeform phase. That is my favorite way of processing a bass line that's not already using phasing in the wavetable itself. This is just a very clean way to do it. and this is a free plugin. You can download it from the Melda website. And I just have a preset that I use, and the way that you set it up from the default is that you right click and then you can turn off drawing mode. Then for you, those 2 points will appear. The line will still be in the middle, and then you can just drag this point all the way down and this point all the way up. And then obviously copy extreme as well as the depth amount. But the depth amount is something that you can play with to change the way that it's processed. As you can hear, the depth amount just determines how much of the processing is being applied. Essentially, those numbers of the phase rotation that this plugin applies is multiplied by the percentage. So 200%, like we have in this case, is double the amount of processing that it is by default. After that, we have to deal with the post-stringing, so that's where this LFO tool comes in. Note that we have to set the phase because this plugin, the M freeform phase, does introduce a little bit of latency. So therefore we have to compensate with the phase like we have done right here. But basically, we're just carving out the space where the kick is going to be. And again, I'm smoothly cutting it off instead of immediately going down to prevent any clicks from happening. Next up, somebody on stream while I was making this bassline pointed out that this plugin is very good as a saturation unit on your high-tech basslines. So this is the black box analog design by Brainworks, and this applies both pentode and triode saturation. So that means that it adds both even and odd harmonics, and you can choose which of them you want. Somebody did point out that you have to click this button on. By default, this button is off. If you leave it off, it will only emulate the tubes that are in there. And in this case, it will also actually apply some saturation. Finally, we have some EQing just to get the tone a little bit different. You can hear that it makes it slightly darker and also slightly clickier. And then this is just my filter rack, which I use for filter automations on the kick as well as the bass. There's one on the bass line and there's a separate one on the kick. So that's how you make the kick and bass. If you then combine it with some synths and some other effects and some vocals, you'll get something like this. So that's going to be the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know by leaving a like. And if you're new here and you want to see more of what I do, make sure that you're subscribed. I'm going to take a few of the synth sounds that sit in this project, and I'm also going to be making tutorials for those. So if you're interested in that, definitely make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. That's going to be everything for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.